I've often been operating with the mindset of a poor struggling musician for a lot of years, and it's been difficult to get rid of even as I've had some success in the industry. Aside from the fact that when you go to music school, nobody really tells you how to manage your finances as a musician, then you also have to look at the side of the industry that always constantly wants to take advantage of you. They do this because they know that musicians are always hungry for work. Even though I haven't sat in that space for a long time, it's still worth it to take lessons from that part of life and move forward with them. Over the last couple of years, I've put a lot more effort into looking at some of the successful people I know in all industries and paying attention to how they got there. In the music world, in fact, I started hiring someone who I felt was very beneficial to me, not only as a friend, but as a mentor. Xiaoan Li is a Berklee alumni friend of mine that I've known for a long time and went on after school to have a really great career as a super successful composer. If you've ever watched his Instagram or his LinkedIn account, he obviously breaks down a lot of processes that he uses when he's composing his music, to make great things for client, but he has really honest takes on how to deal with the music industry, which I've always really appreciated. But the biggest takeaways for me in the last couple of years have been more about the value of myself as a musician and also the value of my work. I started breaking things down in a couple of different ways. Typically when you work in the touring world or even in the wedding band world, you book gigs on a per gig rate. But let's be real, considering all the things that we know to be involved, especially the travel end of things, we should really be thinking about booking these gigs on a per day rate. Okay, so for the sake of example, let's say that you got called for a wedding gig coming up. The band leader asks you to be at the venue for 3 p.m. for a setup, 4 p.m. for a sound check, and 7 p.m. for the hit. You're likely playing till 11 o'clock, and you're probably taking breaks, but you're expected to be on site the entire time. Even if that's in town and you didn't travel that far, you've basically just given up north of 8 hours of your day dedicated to a gig. That's a whole lot of time. In the town where I spend most of my time, Charlotte, people book these gigs all the time for about $300 a person. For me, I don't feel like that's worth it. Considering an 8-hour day, that's less than $40 per hour to be away from home and do a very specialized job. Not only that, but those are basically the same rates that I remember getting paid when I was a kid starting out in this industry. In that time, my bills have gone up a lot higher, so why hasn't my pay? You also have to think a little bit about, in those 8 hours, maybe you spent that away from your partner, maybe you spent that away from a family or a friend event, or simply there was something else that you would have loved to have done in that time. Now let's tack on a couple of things here. The band leader calls you back and says, "Hey, I need you guys to learn 3 new songs for this job." Great, you've probably tacked on a minimum of 3 more hours to this gig. That means that $300 paycheck over 11 hours is equivalent to about $27 per hour. What if this gig was out of town? A couple hours there, a couple hours back. Now you're probably up around 15 hours for your workday. And that same $300 paycheck, that's now $20 per hour. Is it really worth your time? Are you playing a couple different instruments for the same pay? I bring this up because as a woodwind player, you're more or less expected to play a couple different instruments, and now as a bass player, you're probably playing key bass too. So why should somebody be getting such a deal on you? Think about the amount of time that you took to perfect a first instrument and then a second instrument. Musicians, just take this in for a moment. You do specialized work. Please don't forget that. Now a second idea to think through this with: the type of work you're doing. Now, the basic scenario that I'm not really going to discuss here are the simple session gigs where somebody calls you up, the client has a budget, you accept, you go into a recording studio, you read a piece of music or a lead sheet, and that's the end of it. What I'd really like to talk about here is the type of session work you do where your expectation is not only being the player, but you're creating a piece of work that kind of shifts your role from just being a player to also being potentially a songwriter or a producer. If you're creating a piece of art that adds to said piece of music in a way that puts you in the role of a songwriter or a producer, you should be getting some writing royalties long term. There are great examples of this, but for particularly you Pink Floyd fans out there, in 2004, Claire Torrey successfully sued Pink Floyd and EMI for songwriting royalties on the basis that her contribution constituted co-authorship. Now, let's be realistic. For most of us, this probably won't add up to much, but when you build up a library of music that you own little pieces of and it gets large enough, you can start to create some semi-consistent income over time on that. What I want you to be mindful of though here is being able to differentiate when somebody pays you to come in to simply do a job or if they're asking you to create, because there's a difference in how you should be collecting your pay for that. Last but not least, and a little bit of a sum up of all of this, when you continue to accept work that is below what you feel your value is or what should be acceptable in your industry, you're not helping anyone else make appropriate money either. Look, let's keep this conversation going. I'm really interested in getting things out in the open that musicians are afraid to talk about in this industry. I've just always felt like this industry kind of ate its own and was always here to take advantage of everyone that was in it, kind of chew them up and spit them out. But it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. It just continues to be that way because we're not talking about any of these things. So in the comment section down below, let's keep this going. Creatives, what's on your mind?